Welcome to the Pompey Politics podcast. For those of you listening live, a little later than expected, but you are listening to the podcast where we focus on matters local, national, international, and discuss them in a calm and rational way to get to the heart of the matter. I'm Ian Tiny Morris, and my stressed co-presenter is
Simon Sansbury. Yeah, there's some sort of issue with our streaming software's connection to Facebook and Instagram. So, but we still seem to have plenty of viewers. So, if you're watching, thank you very much for bearing with us and having the patience to do that. Well, we'll just carry on as we were. So, we can obviously you can always make sure that you do get the latest on what we're doing by following us on YouTube, Facebook, and giving us a like, a comment, and a subscribe. So please do that. So aside from all of that stress, what were we doing today, Ian?
So today is Pride, June the 1st, which is we're recording this live. It's Pride Month has started, and we are joined by somebody who luckily knows what they're talking about. Welcome, Tally.
Thank you for having me on today.
You're welcome. Sorry about the hiccup at the start there. Which one of us was it that said that everything was going too smoothly just before we went live? I think it was Ian that jinxed that one.
Yeah, Ian jinxed it.
Yeah. Oh, you can't.
Don't ever do that again.
Yeah, no, it all looked so good, didn't it? But we're here now. Let's all settle back and enjoy.
Yes. Yeah. So welcome back, Tally. Yes, as you've been with us before, so thank you very much for giving us another Sunday and spending more time with us. But an exciting month. So been a lot has changed since the last time you came on the show. Portsmouth Pride has taken over the mantle of UK Pride 2025. Could you just share with our listeners and viewers what that has involved and what's happened so far, and I guess what is yet to come in 2025 for Portsmouth Pride and UK Pride?
Yeah, of course. It's been a journey. This has been 2 years in the making, so it's not something that has just happened this year. We put our bid in to host UK Pride back in 2023. There is an organisation called the UK Pride Organisers Network, which is literally what it says on the tin is Pride organisers from up and down the country. I think there's about 200 member prides. Majority of them are volunteer run, and we presented our sort of case, what we would look to do, what we would aim to achieve if we were granted the title of UK Pride 25. And yeah, back in October 23, we were awarded that title at the conference. We've then spent the last year, well, nearly 2 years, looking at engaging with our local community, from local businesses to councillors, other charitable organisations in the city, to get everyone involved and behind us with this. So it is very much, when we say that Portsmouth is hosting UK Pride, we really mean that. While we're obviously organising the Pride event, but it has been a real city collaboration. And what have we done so far? I mean, we always talk about Portsmouth Pride being about more than just one day, and I think us being here at the start of June, which is Pride Month, Pride is about more than 1 month. It's 365 days a year. For all of the people within our LGBTQ plus community, this is our daily lives. This is how we exist. It's wonderful to have an opportunity to be visible, to come and talk to people like yourselves, and have the rest of the country pay attention to the LGBTQ plus community, because so often we can be lost and forgotten. And what we've really tried to achieve with hosting UK Pride is there have been events pretty much since the beginning of December. We had our World AIDS Day event at the Queen's Hotel. And since then, I think every month there's been either workshops that have been undertaken under the Queer All Year mantle. We've had fundraising events that have been done by local businesses, and we've also put on a few of our own events as well. Most notably, it was sort of all listed on our calendar, which was on our website. So I think there was 25 events for 2025, and I think that just extrapolated and expanded. And what we're really looking forward to this week, I mean, Monday coming up, is we have our entire week of Pride. So there is a Battler Sober Social, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, they are a drumming troupe who generally lead the parade at Pride. We've got a parenting event as part of Pride with the Parenting Network, which has been sponsored as well by Bisco's, who are one of our main charity partners. We have a soiree which is going on Wednesday. Tickets have completely sold out, but that is also about bringing people together for something a bit different. The King's Theatre have got an amazing show on, which is all linked into our Pride Week. And then there's HB's pre-Pride party. I think there's a few other things that are going on in the city on the Friday night. And we're hosting, I think there's about 90 other Pride organisers who are coming to Portsmouth for UK Pride. So we're going to be hosting them on Friday night at an event in the Spinnaker Tower. Yeah, just to kind of say thank you for their vote and thank you for their support with trusting us to hold the mantle of UK Pride. And then on the 7th we have Portsmouth Pride for the main day. So yeah, and as volunteers we're also doing our day jobs. I think I've taken a bit of annual leave, but I still have my day job to do on top of all of this.
Well, there's certainly a lot going on, and I'm surprised you managed to list all of that without pausing for really pausing for breath. That's quite the packed agenda.
Yes.
No, and it's great. You've got a whole kind of range of events there, and again, for people who perhaps don't know as much about the history of Pride, I mean, obviously the origins of the organisation, it was a protest movement. As time has kind of evolved, I think a lot of people now see it very much as a sort of celebration event. Does that give a sort of tension within the Pride movement, or is that one of its key strengths, that balance between protest and celebration?
I think that it really is about language and how we understand and identify the word protest. Because when you say protest, people kind of think of marches, banners, chanting, and sometimes there can be quite a lot of anger behind protests. And what we really look at it and say, a protest is fundamentally about being visible and showing that you you don't agree with the social norms or the legislation, or there's a variety of reasons why we as a society protest. And actually for prides, well, yes, it does, it is a great day out for everyone. It is a protest at its core, because until LGBTQ plus people have equal rights and equal understanding in society, then we are just our very existence is a protest. Every single time that you have to go to the doctor, or you seek healthcare, or just generally day to day in your job, every interaction that you have as an LGBTQ plus person, you have to weigh up, one, is it safe for me to come out and out myself? Two, having to have the same conversation, because we automatically have this default that every single person is cisgendered and heterosexual. I'm a lesbian, I'm married to a woman. Every single time I go to the doctor, I have any procedure done, anything like that, they ask me if I'm pregnant. They ask you, are you on contraception? No. Are you pregnant? No. I have to out myself before they will believe me. So when we say, it's a festival, it's a great day out, fundamentally it is a protest, because what we're highlighting and what we're demonstrating is we are here, we exist 365 days of the year, but actually now there's so many more of us, you kind of can't get away from our existence, you can't ignore us. So for me, every Pride is a protest. I think the fundamental difference for us at Portsmouth is because we take that rhetoric and everything we do is a protest, we ensure that it is free and it is unfenced, because a protest should be free and unfenced. If you start charging for it, then it does become a festival. It is you're paying, people are paying, there is a barrier for them to attend. So for us at Portsmouth, 100%, it is from start to finish, from the events that we run that are free for people to access. The march that we do in the morning, we have a massive big flag and we have bubbles and we have a vintage bus supplied by Stagecoach. It is fun, it's colourful, we have people cheering, we have music, but it's still a protest. And even when that comes onto the common, that is still a protest. What we're saying is these people support the LGBTQ plus community, the acts that we have on stage. And this year we've got a really diverse range of acts because we want to make sure that every member of our community can see themselves represented on that stage. That is a protest. So for me, I don't think there is a conflict with the two elements. I think it's really just about the language that we use and our understanding of those words.
And it sounds like, and again, forgive me, what I think I've heard there is it sounds much more like positive action than angry rhetoric. Would that be a fair summation?
Yeah, 100%. We want to show the world, and especially in the UK, we want to show our government that we are just people who want to live our lives. But in order for us to live our lives, we need to have the same recognition. And within that, we also would like to kind of get away from this default assumption, gay people come out, trans people have to come out. We all are expected to disclose who we are. And until you get true equity where everyone discloses their sexuality, everyone discloses their gender identity, then it's not really an equal society, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. No, it does. I'm going to throw over to Simon.
Okay, so I mean, following on from that, then one thing that is quite different this year about this year's Pride is Portsmouth, the UK Pride, and I mean has followed other Pride events across the country that have decided not to extend an invite to their marches or to have stalls to political parties. Would you mind just kind of helping us understand kind of the thinking behind that and how that decision was made?
Yeah, I think we put out a statement in the latter part of May. And I know that a lot of other prides, like the four big prides have followed suit. And I think this is something within the pride community that a huge number of prides have done. We consulted with local organizations, people within our community. We also spoke with party individuals within the parties and with our local MPs as well. One of the reasonings for this is there was a huge call to action from our trans community who didn't feel comfortable with Labour having a presence there. For us as a charity, we have to remain politically unbiased, and we have to look at a blanket rule of all or nothing. And it was a very difficult decision to make, but fundamentally, what we're doing this year is not affording them a formal platform. I know that the term banned has been bandied around, and I think I have seen councillors, not from Portsmouth, but I know from outside in other like local councillors outside of Portsmouth City Council, I think in the New Forest Way and up and down the country are saying that they are being banned from Pride. And that's not the case. What we're doing is, I guess, and again, protesting in a way that we disagree with what is currently happening. We disagree with the treatment of our trans and non-binary siblings, and the only a way that we can truly be effective is to band together and kind of outline this. And by not extending the offer for official platforms at Pride, in the past we've had councillors and MPs on our Pride bus. We've allowed our MPs to speak on stage. They always have stalls there. By taking that away, what we really want them to do is to kind of wake up and see that this is impacting our community, and we want to listen to what the LGBTQ plus community of Portsmouth says. And we've done this with consultation, and it was a slightly lengthier process, but we needed to act and we needed to do something to demonstrate to our trans community and our non-binary siblings that we hear them and we see what is happening, and we are helping to make a stand. And the only thing that I can hope is that from this, it will enable us to have further conversation, more positive conversations with both of our local MPs, and with other prides with their local MPs, so that we can discuss what is happening and see if we can get some real change in government. We continue, we want to continue working with our MPs and our councillors because we acknowledge and we know that this is how we make political change. But we have to stand with our community and, also ensure that it is a safe event for everyone and that everyone who attends is comfortable. But, and I just want to clarify that no political parties are being banned from Portsmouth Pride. Councillors who are part of a party, anyone who is a member of a political party, you are still free to attend Portsmouth Pride. Because I think that's something that I think maybe there's been a bit of confusion about, is people thinking that they are, as individuals, because they are a member of a political party, are banned. That is not the case.
No, thank you. Well, thank you for that clarification, and I apologise that we've repeated that confusion then in some of the wording of the question that I've put into onto the stream. So my apologies for that, and thank you for the correcting.
But this is a wonderful opportunity to kind of debunk a lot of this stuff. And with our statement, I think we were very clear. But it's easy for words to get. It's easy for things to get extrapolated, and also I can't guarantee what the wording on other prides says, and I can only speak for Portsmouth Pride, where we're saying every single human being is welcome at Portsmouth Pride. We're just not inviting or offering political parties a platform at Pride, because it is about our community, and we hope that we can continue to have conversations with Stephen and Amanda to kind of highlight the issues that are faced by our community and ensure that we can work together to make positive change and get us back to, kind of where we were 2 or 3 months ago, because that was a much better place than it is now.
Thank you.
So, Tally, one of the things, and you mentioned it in that first question I gave to you, is that Portsmouth is it's ungated. There's no charge. I guess is that becoming increasingly challenging to do in the economic and political climate currently, or is that it sounds like it's quite fundamental to the way in which you organise it and the way in which the event is delivered.
It is, at the moment, it is fundamental. It is fundamental to the core of what we've done. The current committee, since we became a charity, like I've been involved in Portsmouth Pride since 2016. I was a volunteer, and then in 2017 I joined as the chair, and have been involved in that. And since I've been a part of it, it is really fundamental to me, being someone who is mixed race. There are inherent risks. Even if you have to have a ticket to a free event, it can put people off, or it can put people in a very difficult or dangerous position. We want to continue to do this as long as we possibly can. Fundamentally, but it is extremely difficult in this political climate, and financially, the only thing that we can hope from a political side is we're very lucky that Portsmouth, most of the negativity that we see when it comes to Portsmouth Pride or LGBT related things tend to just be on Facebook. We haven't had any incidents that I am aware of at our events. In the run up to our events, it generally tends to just be negative comments, on Facebook, which is fine. We have a wonderful security team, Sentinel Security, who are just fantastic, especially within LGBTQ plus events. Their team are really well trained, and they're wonderful allies and supporters. So from a safety perspective, we are happy. There is always growing concerns as we see the rise of more right-wing political parties, and those comments that happen on Facebook. There is concern that could spill out because people are becoming emboldened with their bigotry. We've seen it happen in the US quite significantly. So again, that is a concern, but we do our risk assessments. We work with the team at PSAG to make sure that the event that we're putting on is safe and we can capture anything that may be a risk. And we work very hard to do that. The team, like Dan, who is our event logistics manager and one of our trustees, he works exceptionally hard. He's very much a behind the scenes, but he does a huge amount of work in relation to that. From a financial perspective, sorry, go on. You were going to ask.
No, carry on. I'm sorry.
From a financial perspective, Yeah, it's difficult. We've seen I think the UK Pride Organisers Network put out some data, or they've been collecting data, and I think there is a significant drop in EDI funding. Majority of volunteer-run prides get their money from either EDI budgets or marketing budgets. That tends to be where the funding actually comes from. And there has been a stark drop in funding. I mean, we've been extremely lucky with having UK Pride 2025. We have our core partners, Hampshire Boulevard, Portsmouth City Council, Liquid Friday, Victorious Festival, and then Bisco Solicitors have joined us this year. Our partners are really, we knew that we were having UK Pride. We involved them within that conversation, and they have found a bit of extra money to make sure that we can deliver an amazing event and still keep it to our core tenants, keeping it free, keeping it accessible, keeping it available to everyone, because they also believe that that's massively important. We also have amazing partners from all across Portsmouth, from local businesses like Baker Miller, which is a independently run women-owned business, to Portsmouth Water, which is a local water company, and the value of this all varies, but every little donation helps and aids us, and we've never really gone down the route of personal fundraising, so like just giving pages or individual donations. But I would ask and get everyone who attends. I think we had about 10,000 people attend last year over the course of the day. And if every single one of those individuals donated £1, that would mean that would cover about a tenth of what we would need to pay out for Pride. All of our financials we're a registered charity, so all of our financials are on the Charity Commission website, so people can go and have a look. But it does get harder. But one of the things that we will always do is to deliver what we have based on the budget and continue to do that. We've grown significantly over the last 8 years. When I started in 2017, we did a free event on the bandstand. We borrowed some staging from the grapes that someone had to put in their van. It was a bit of 2x2, and now we've got two massive stages. And this year we've been extremely fortunate to get a significant Arts Council England grant. And grant funding again is very hard. It's very competitive with all the prides that are happening up and down the country. But it's things like this where it's about more than just that one day or that the 2 days of the festival. It's about all the work that you do all year round. We've done work with the NHS on accessing healthcare. We've done a piece of work about raising queer voices in again relation to healthcare, so that we can put back into the services, so that we're not just always having the same conversations over and over again.
And it does show, and I think from the list you gave us at the start, that there is, you do so much with what you have. And I guess you mentioned Portsmouth City Council. I guess from a council perspective, with so much funding challenges, does there an innate tension there with Portsmouth contributing towards Pride?
I mean, not that I'm aware of. And again, I mean, the only thing that I can attest to is potential comments on Facebook. There's never been any challenges. No one has challenged the city council, I guess, as far as I am aware, to say that they don't want Portsmouth Pride being funded with council fundings. I don't know all the ins and the outs of it, but part of the funding that we get is also kind of linked to events. It's part of an SLA, and we have to highlight. We put together a significant report about all the work that we do within the city to justify the donation that they give us. And this is from engagement with the LGBT community. We've been highlighting and raising their "You Are Not Alone" campaign for mental health. We're working with other organisations such as Downtown Pompey, who recently they did a Knees Up show ahead of Pride, and they've got another Knees Up show post Pride, and working with them, signposting people as part of our outreach events that we do, where we go to Love Southsea Market, we go do Victorious Festival, we do other festivals that are happening within the city. We signpost people who have young LGBT people, we signpost them to the council services for the For You For Me project. So there is a significant amount of work that we do, and actually we are able to attract the LGBTQ plus audience because they come to us, because they feel safe and they feel comfortable, and then that gives us an opportunity to then highlight the things that are available to them, because otherwise those services just get cut, and then LGBTQ plus people are left even more alone. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts, and it is an investment in the city and in the people of the city. And it enables us to, again, keep it completely free and unfenced. There is no bandstand on the weekend that we're on because, again, we form part of that programming.
So interesting there, and I guess what you're describing there is Pride being that wraparound service for the whole community, 365 days a year. So I guess, the angry Facebook posters who might perceive that, Portsmouth have given you a stack of money to have a jolly good party next weekend would be missing the point of all the work that you're doing all year.
100%, completely, because it is, yes, it is a part of that. The council are one of our main charity partners, but we, like any other charity, we are a charity, and we're here to perform a function and a service. And part of that function is the main day event, which is the bit that most people see. But if you were to go on Instagram and you're to follow Queer All Year, that's queer.all.year, you would see all of the events that are being put on, especially in sober spaces. We know that alcoholism and drug abuse are really prevalent within the LGBTQ plus community, and this comes from, well, you don't know, but this will come from a lot of the trauma, especially for people of my generation. I grew up during Section 28, which meant that, I didn't see other LGBTQ plus people. We were persecuted. I mean, it was a lot better when I grew up in, the late 90s, early 2000s than it was in the 60s and 70s. But it's a progression. And I think we also have to bear in mind that, there is people who are still struggling with a lot of trauma from their upbringings. The younger generation are in a much better, well, hopefully in a slightly better environment. But then we also look at, the rampant bigotry that happens. And, we talk about people like Brianna Jai, who was a 16-year-old trans girl who was murdered by her peers. So if Pride can be free and be unfenced and have young people or older people, across the age spectrum come along and meet people who are like them, see people who are like them, reach out to services without fear of bigotry, I think that's, you can't put a value on that.
No, thank you. That's really insightful.
Thank you. Yes. Part a bit of what we touched on there, obviously, with about the money, is that there's a lot of corporate adoption of Pride branding during the month. Is that more than just cynical pride washing by those corporations, or does it actually serve a positive purpose?
I think it depends on the intention. And I know that, I think it's really, really difficult to say, but if you're going to change your logo on all your social media, LinkedIn and so on and so forth, and you haven't given a penny to an LGBTQ plus charity, that is, that's virtual signaling. If you haven't given your LGBTQ plus network a budget so that they can go and attend prides or they can have a stall at an event, then that is pink washing, because what you're doing is you're trying to turn around to an organization and say, or turn around to the wider populace and say, we are LGBTQ plus friendly. So come and spend your money with us. And I think, the prime example with this is Barclays. I'm not entirely sure if they've changed their logo. I know that they have sponsored Pride events previously, and their reaction to the Supreme Court's ruling on the Equalities Act is to implement this, biological sex. Oh, sorry, I'm doing quotes, but you can't see them. if they then change their logo, to me, then that's they're not allies to the trans community. And if you're not allies to the trans community, LGB, there is no LGB without the T. So to me, as in that example, that is pinkwashing. That is not genuine support. I can completely and utterly understand, like, for smaller businesses, they may not have a budget to do it. But what I would always say is, if you could donate, £5 for every employee that you have working in your business and donate it to an LGBTQ plus charity, then change your logo to the rainbow logo. Demonstrate that, this is something that you are doing because you are supporting the community in some way, shape, or form. If you are in Portsmouth, I would advise Portsmouth Pride, but that's because I am the commercial manager for Portsmouth Pride. But I would say, wherever you are in the country, find your local pride, especially if it's a volunteer pride. Find local LGBTQ plus charities. Do a bake sale. People do Macmillan coffee mornings to raise money. Why not consider doing one in June for your local LGBTQ plus charity? Because if you're not willing to put some budget towards it as a business, then all you're doing is essentially pinkwashing. You're saying, we want the LGBTQ plus pound, but we're not actually willing to do anything positive to do it.
Thank you. No, that's very, very forthright. And sadly, unfortunately, there are companies that are quite willing to in various subjects, they're quite willing to go with where they perceive a financial benefit to them is, without actually doing the hard work and actually supporting members of their staff that are members of the LGBTQ plus community, or as you say, giving financial support to community organisations.
And I do think, even with that, if you're looking at your staff, like, support your staff. Like, if you have a LGBT staff network, then make sure they have a budget so they can go to Pride. Make sure that, we have people that may not necessarily be religious, they may not want to take time off over Easter, then give them the opportunity to swap those bank holidays so that they can take it off for their local pride. Like, these are very small EDI initiatives that can make a real difference to your employees. Small things like this can really help, and can demonstrate true, that you are genuinely there for the LGBTQ plus community.
Brilliant.
We touched on protest earlier. What are the biggest elements of protest in the LGBTQ plus community at the moment, and what are Portsmouth Pride doing to address those?
For us as a volunteer-run organisation, I think our time and capacity is extremely limited on what we can and can't do. What we are trying to do at the moment is to work with other LGBTQ plus organisations and groups within the city, to try and lobby for some understanding and recognition. I think, obviously, the biggest thing that's affecting our community at the moment is a Supreme Court ruling that has come out on the Equalities Act. And I think one of the most devastating things with all of this is while it is a clarification, it is not a change in the law. So as much as organizations and businesses, and especially night venues and any venue that has single sex spaces, it is not law. Like, you do not have to exclude trans people from specific spaces based on the sex that they were assigned at birth. That is not the law. So as it stands at the moment, you as a business, or as a venue, can take the stand to say nothing is changing. Trans women are women, trans men are men, non-binary people exist, and you can use whatever toilet facility that you feel comfortable to use. You can use whatever changing facility that you feel comfortable to use, because there has been no change in the law. It's down to the individual businesses. And what we're seeing is businesses and venues who are scared, who are getting scared of people complaining. And the people that will be complaining are the ones who hold I'm trying to say it in the right way.
Yeah.
A limited education. I'll put my hand up and say, I'm not a biologist. I'm an engineer. I think I'm fairly well educated. I am not a biologist. My rudimentary understanding of human biology is, you have XX chromosome, which is female, for want of a better word. As far as I am aware, I have XX chromosomes, but I have never had my chromosomes tested. Biology is so much more in depth than this. We have people who have XXY chromosomes. There are 26 chromosomes within DNA, which is how we see, individuals who have Down syndrome, because there's a chromosome missing, I believe. But again, I'm not a biologist. So to
Yeah.
fundamentally boil it down and say what makes me a woman is because I have XX chromosomes, that's fine. But then I need to be tested. I need my chromosomes to be tested, and I need a certificate to say that this is what my chromosomes are, so I can go and pee in that bathroom. That's ridiculous.
And you touch on the fear there, and I think many people will be encouraged by you trying to find the right language, because this is a topic where discussion often isn't done with rational language or with thought. There is this element of, you know, to my understanding, nobody's ever had to show their passport or any kind of identity documents to go to the toilet. It's never happened to me one way or the other. So it does
And
feel like everything at the moment in this space appears to be rooted in fear, and
100%.
and for me, as somebody kind of watching on who's not part of the community, often it seems boiled down to abstract things which probably will never happen, but if. Is that a fair comment?
It's not even an if. It's fairy tale fiction that is being used to stir up fear, in the same way it was in the 1980s when we talked about the AIDS crisis. That was to stir up fear, to stir up hatred. In the same way, in America in the 20s and like 20s, 30s, 40s, about race. There is and even the same here. We used to have signs on if you wanted to go and get accommodation where it had specific categories of people that couldn't be there for what fear? For fear because of things that people think may happen. And I just want to pull it back on this conversation to you saying I've never been asked for my passport. One of the most damaging things with this quote unquote clarification is, under the law, under the Equalities Act, if you are a person who has transitioned, you can get a gender recognition certificate. And there was a whole consultation that was actually led. Penny Mordaunt wrote the foreword for the consultation when she was the Women and Equalities Minister. And she wrote the foreword and said that this whole process for getting a gender recognition certificate is arbitrary, paperwork intensive, and it is done by a group of individuals who don't necessarily understand or know the person. So in order to get a gender recognition certificate, you have to basically prove that you are trans. So you have to live your life under a new name. You have to get two doctors to sign to say that you have gender dysphoria, to allow you to move on to this process, to allow you to start medically transitioning through hormones. Once you've done all of this and you have lived for, I think it's a minimum period of 5 years, at that point you can compile all of this evidence and put it to a panel of doctors, and they can then decide whether or not you deserve that gender recognition certificate. It is easier for me to go and get chartered as a professional in any industry than it is to get a gender recognition certificate. There is so much paperwork that goes through this. So now, with this clarification, if you have your gender recognition certificate and you have your passport changed to an F or an M,
Yeah.
that passport is completely invalid, because while you have had gender reassignment and you have your gender recognition certificate, because it is listed under gender, as opposed to, like, you can legally change your sex on your passport and your documents, but what this clarification is saying, well, you can't legally change your sex. So what has not only happened is we've had this clarification, which then completely undermines the protections that trans individuals have under the Equalities Act. And one of the dog whistle rhetoric that is being used is it's for the protection of women. I can honestly say, if you ask all of the women in Portsmouth and all of the women across the world if they have ever feared a trans woman in their same space, in their same sex space, the answer would be no. And the rhetoric is that, oh, well, men are going to dress up as women to use these spaces. It's for the safety of women. Because this is rooted very specifically with certain rhetorics, trans men have been excluded from this conversation. If you go and Google some very, very predominant trans men, they present extremely outwardly male. They have massive beards, all the things that we as a society would, expect aesthetically men to look like. And we're now telling them that they have to go and use women's spaces, women's changing spaces, women's toilets. And what we've actually now done is enabled men who potentially are predators access to women's spaces, because rather than them having to, go out and buy a dress and shave their beard and pretend to be a woman, now they can freely just walk into these spaces and say they're trans, say they're trans men. So the exact opposite has happened to the rhetoric that has been used for this clarification.
And I guess this, this is one of these. It has exploded into consciousness, and as you say, it's often so difficult with this issue to sort truth from fiction. The issues around self-identification, as you say, of men just going and popping a dress on and saying, well, I'm a woman now, it is part of that rhetoric that's been about. How can you see any way back from this that could work for the LGBTQ plus community?
I think fundamentally we need to stop talking about sex and we need to start talking about gender, because however you define it or describe it, we are talking about our gender identity. Yes, you can change your gender, you can change your legal sex, but it's the legal definitions of things. And if we were to remove this, we were to remove the term sex, it would remove biological sex and it would be gender. It would be individuals' gender identity and how they present in the world. And I think that there needs to be a much wider conversation. And again, it comes back to removing these default societal positions. Women should look a certain way, men should look a certain way. We even come back to it, over history, we've seen it change. Dresses in France in the 1700s, high heels and big wigs were for men. In France, they were for men. That was how men dressed. And now this is, how women should dress. And for me personally, I was talking to my partner, and I've had long hair ever since. I had short hair when I was like 14, 15, 16. I had short hair and I used to wear a baseball cap, and I would go into the women's toilets and people would look at me and they would be confused and they would think that I was a 14-year-old boy or 13-year-old boy,
Yeah.
because I had quite baggy clothes, and they'd be like, oh, you're in the wrong place. And I've spoken to other like mass presenting lesbians who at that age, when they came out in their teens, had the same thing happen. And I recently cut my hair in the last year, and everyone said it looks really great. And I didn't realize what the fear was until the Supreme Court ruling happened. And it's like, now because of how I look, I'm going to potentially be challenged. I'm going to be challenged on the spaces that I use and the places that I go. I'm going to have to prove what my legal sex is. And that's insane. It's insane to live in a world where we are making judgments based on people's physical appearance when we've spent the last, 2 decades trying to prevent people from doing that, trying to get people out of the habit of just making assumptions based on how someone looks, educating people to say that, you can dress how you want to dress, you can be free to express yourself. And what we're now doing is having people make changes to their policies about who can use what spaces based on fear because of this ruling. Having people who have held bigoted views, and we've seen it in the US, and we will see it now, being emboldened, to um, incite verbal abuse, physical abuse, and essentially try to push the LGBTQ plus community back into the closet, back into a world where we have to hide and we have to have our secret parties because we don't want to get arrested for existing.
And Charlie, I'd like to say thank you for because I know it's a very difficult and emotive topic at the moment, and thank you for helping lead us through that. And I think that kind of leads on to our next question.
So, surely most people just want to live their life in peace. You'd like to think, and are happy for others, to do so too. So, in 2025, what does being a good ally look like?
I think being a good ally is being aware of what's going on around you. I think there's so many people that exist in the world that if it doesn't directly affect them, they don't really know about it. And if you don't have people in your life who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, it's very easy to say, well, you've got equal marriage, like why do you care? Like I don't like, what else do you want? I think in these times is doing what you can to be inclusive, ensuring that if you run a business, you run a venue, um, have gender neutral toilets. Change your toilets to sit down and pee here, stand up and pee there. Embrace spaces where everybody is welcome, and to kind of call out bigotry when you see it. We talk about, and this isn't just from a LGBTQ plus perspective, but it's across the board. There is racism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism that are rife, and I understand that sometimes there is this attitude of, well, I just don't want it shoved down my throat. We're not trying to shove anything down anyone's throat. We're just trying to exist. And maybe listen to the people that are impacted by these decisions. One of the things that we really try to do, for me as an LGB person, well, L person, but there is no LGB without the T. And it's our responsibility as gay and queer people to listen to our trans and non-binary siblings and take that emotional load to fight for them, because it is about their life and their existence, in the same way that all the lesbians and gay men and bisexual women who came, well, men and women who came before us, have fought for the rights that I have. It's my duty as an ally to fight for the trans and non-binary community, to ensure that they, and gender diverse individuals, to make sure that they are afforded rights and respect. And if you are a cisgendered heterosexual person, then learn about what's happening for us, learn about where the word cisgender comes from, learn about the fights and the plights that we have had to go through, learn about the history of our community, to see, the violence that has been faced, to see the difficulty that has been put upon us. There are so many women in history who were just the very best of friends. In history, we've completely erased LGBTQ plus people. And that's really prevalent with, the Alan Turing film. He's now on our money, but it was only recently. It's only been 25 years since LGBTQ plus people could serve in the armed forces. It's a relatively new history, so let's talk about it, let's understand it, let's try and be a part of making change, so that one day we can have a conversation and all of this will be, shocking that these kind of restrictions were imposed. We look back at segregation in the US and the apartheid in South Africa, and we go, oh my gosh, it's shocking that happened. But that's literally what we're about to live through, is the segregation of trans people. To do what you can to make sure that they don't have to be segregated.
Thank you.
Well, we've taken a pause there for a second just to absorb that. I think, Tully. Obviously, you've got a very, very busy week ahead. When you've collapsed in a heap next Sunday evening, what are your hopes for this week in terms of what success will look like? Oh, that sounded like an interview question, didn't it? But yeah, it's that. What do you hope that by this time next week, Portsmouth Pride will have achieved?
Well, I'm extremely looking forward to the HB Sunday street party, because we normally do the Saturday, like we organise it all, and then on Sunday we're kind of packing down the site. So I'm absolutely looking forward to going and seeing some acts and celebrating and just enjoying it, because it's an event that I haven't put on. So I'm absolutely thrilled about that. And I think Monday I'm gonna collapse, and for me, success, the same as it always does. For people to show up, as long as a couple of people show up and they have a good time, and hearing the stories of people from Pride, the little snippets of conversations, where people are coming with their friends. Someone has, we over the years, someone has come out to their family. I've heard a conversation in the street between two like very straight, like Pompey lads, and one of them saying they happened across Pride and it was all right to be fair. And I heard conversations similar to that go in a very different way. For me, if anyone follows me on Instagram, message me and let me know how your Pride was, because that's what I want to hear. As long as one person has a good time, that's what success is for me.
We'll take that, Tully. Thank you ever so much for giving up your Sunday evening, and we wish you every success in the coming week, and the success of Queer All Year. So you've been listening to the Pompey Politics Podcast. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
And our guest this evening has been Tally Aslam from Portsmouth Pride Trust. I've been Simon Sansbury. Please do remember to like, follow and subscribe, and give us all those lovely comments over the social media platforms. And if you're listening to us as a podcast, please do give us a review. And follow and share if you like the show. But thank you very much, Ian, Tally, and have a great week ahead. And we're going to take a break next week, so we'll be back. We'll be back in a week or so, and we'll publish our itinerary before then. But this has been the Pompey Politics Podcast, and I've been Simon Sansbury.